Divorce lawyers of Reddit. What is the most ridiculous reason your client filed divorce for? I heard of a woman that had her marriage annulled because the groom insisted to bring his mother on their honeymoon. Then, on the honeymoon, the bride discovered the reason he wanted to bring his mother was to breastfeed him. Yes, the groom, a grown man, was still breastfeeding. I had two couples come to me. They had been friends for nigh on 15 years. Husband A decided he liked wife B more than wife A. Wife A decided she likes husband B more than husband A. The reverse was also true. And husband B preferred wife A. Wife B preferred husband A. The couples had near identical assets in terms of value. They came to me all together. And I drafted 2 sets of paperwork. 2 default judgment hearings were set on the same day. The judge signed all the papers the same day. A week after that, they all went to a JP and remarried. The husbands swapped houses and they all went about their lives exactly as they had the week before. But each slightly happier. Edit. No, this was not Rob Lowe or a picture in the 1970s. I'm only 34. No, I have never read, seen, or heard of Marmalade Boy before today. But I will look for it to read next weekend. No, you probably don't live or work in your state. He loved his pinball machine collection more than her. Also, it turns out some pinball machines can be worth a load of money. My boss just got divorced. His wife was telling people one of her reasons was the amount of toilet paper he used. She was a super coupon clipper thrifty lady and would listen when he went to the bathroom to see if he was using too much TP. Not me, but my friend who specializes in family law. Wife wanted to divorce husband because he kept taking their dogs for walks while she was at work, making it, unintentionally, so they'd rather cuddle the husband instead of her after a long day. I'm not a divorce lawyer, but this case appeared in one of my case books in law school. Beidou v Blood Dracu. Basically, a couple got married but never lived together. Shortly after marriage, the husband dropped off the face of the earth and the wife had no way of contacting him. She didn't know any of his family and apparently the place he told her he worked at never heard of him. He disconnected his cell phone and she even hired a private detective to try and locate him with no success. Finally, she tried to file for divorce, for obvious reasons, but for service to be considered valid the defendant has to be physically handed service papers. Since she couldn't find out where he was, she couldn't even get divorced from him. She had to sue in court just to get permission from a judge to allow service through Facebook because that was literally the only means she had of contacting her husband. Divorce lawyer here. One client filed for divorce because he owed his bookie $70,000. He didn't want to leave his wife, but he figured he would get half the house in the divorce, which was worth $700,000, and pay his debts. He had already blew through their life savings gambling. He was the worst guy. Not a divorce lawyer, but have done marriage therapy. Had a soldier stationed at Guantanamo Bay that met a local. Fell madly in love. They decided to get married so she could come with him back in the States once his tour was done. She was working on American dishes and was making spaghetti. He comes home from work one day and she's making it. She puts the meat in, puts the canned sauce in, and then pulls an unlabeled bag out of the freezer and adds it to the sauce. At this point in the session, she's hysterically crying with broken Spanglish. She's trying to explain she didn't know any better. Through the hysteria, he informs me her mother and grandmother told her if she wanted to keep her man, she needed to put her menstrual blood in his food. It was so hard to keep my composure. I was trying too hard not to gag. They both described they were madly in love, but he couldn't let it go. They ended up getting a divorce. Having done this for 14 years, I have found it 100% accurate that truth is stranger than fiction. My dad split my mom because she takes too long to tell a story. He was actually having affair number 4,795,809,374 and that came out shortly after. But this was one of the main reasons he gave when they did a counseling session together. My mother-in-law divorced my father-in-law so she could have a fresh start with her dream job of teaching blind children to read. Turns out, what she meant by that was, also destroy my father-in-law's pastor career by telling everyone he was abusive. Also got married to the guy she'd secretly been carrying on with. He's a convicted child sex offender. She has grandchildren. She's in a state of complete denial. He was still living with his mom. Not a divorce lawyer, but there's this famous case that all law students know about. The wife asked for annulment of marriage because almost a year into the marriage, they still haven't had sex. The husband has been avoiding it for almost a year, and later on the court found out that he actually only has a 2-inch D. I had a client file for divorce because every morning his wife would ask him how he takes his coffee for 7 years. My neighbor filed for divorce because he smacked his lips when he ate and slurped his coffee and soup. She thought if she didn't she would end up in jail for battery. Not a divorce lawyer, but was told of a client that filed for divorce with his wife because she kept eating his food. Lawyer here. One of mine that sticks out is that the husband and wife both played some sort of online role-playing game. Sort of like The Sims I think, but a little more elaborate and adult. Second Life maybe? I don't know anything about online games. The wife got heavily involved with the game, like 10 hours a day, and wouldn't reduce her time playing no matter what he said. What tipped things over the edge however was that he set up a fake profile avatar and went online to stalk her in the game and found her avatar having sex with some random guy's avatar. Nothing ever happened in real life. Neither of them were exactly oil paintings to look at, but that was enough for the guy to initiate a very acrimonious divorce. Not a lawyer but a friend is. They said the husband wanted a divorce because the wife still wiped the ass of the perfectly healthy and mentally able teenage son among other things. I'm not a lawyer but my brother is one who specializes in family law. He once had a case where the client was divorcing his wife because he was having an affair with his wife's mother. Edit. People keep asking me if the wife's name is Stacy. I have no idea. This case happened in the UK a few years ago I think. Edit to Electric Boogaloo. I'm stupid and don't understand humor. Not a divorce lawyer. One couple that I am close to were in the process of filing for divorce. Papers were served and lawyers were involved, but the husband put down for one of his reasons why things were irreconcilable was because she would eat in his bathroom. I'm sure not exactly in those words. Happy to say that they worked through that issue and are still together. He didn't help her put up a shower curtain. It may have been a straw that broke the camel's back situation though. Best reason. Cops showed up to tell her that her husband is a violent child sex offender and she's now aiding and abetting BC. Her house is next to a school. Client said her husband was dealing meth. Well, technically cooking meth. Heard this one while mobbing for deployment. Guy signs over power of attorney to his mother before leaving. As soon as he was out of the country, mother files for divorce of the wife because they never got along. Dude is in the middle of the desert and didn't know until he came back in 3 weeks after the fact. Edit. For those of you in disbelief that anyone other than a spouse would be given power, it is a lot more common than you might think. Could be for a number of reasons and none of those have to do with trust issues. Not a lawyer, but 2 stories. Wife wanted to divorce her husband on their wedding day because he fought with her father over the bill. Another was a woman who divorced her husband of a week because she's been in love with someone else for several months and found out the other guy loved her too. They're married and have a kid together now. Estate's paralegal here. Saw a divorce where the defendant stopped cooking, and when the petitioner gave the defendant money for food, 80s, so was phraseless housekeeping money, the defendant would disappear for 2 weeks and play bingo. The defendant also lost interest in the child. The bingo comment and stopping cooking comment will forever be ingrained in my head. Edit. Clarify roles of parties. I have a client whose wife filed for divorce because my client hasn't successfully quit smoking yet. Not a lawyer, but a friend of mine divorced her husband because his D was too big. They were dating about 6 months. Got a courthouse wedding and separated about 6 months after. She said it was fun at first but the sex became too much work. She said it took a lot of preparation. Apparently, as well, he was pushing for some butt stuff. When she first told me offhand, I refused to believe it. She showed me a picture of them dancing at their reception and holy it was this guy packing heat. Not an attorney but a paralegal. This isn't why they filed. But the guy didn't think his wife should be able to divorce him because she had Lyme's disease. He thought that having had this impaired her mental facilities and therefore she was not in her right mind to make this decision. We were just the gal for the kids. So every so often we would get calls from him going on and on about this. He kept making terrible Star Wars puns. Divorce is strong with this one. My dad has been married several times, more than 4. His last wife asked him to rub her feet and he said no. She told him to get the FCK out. He was super excited and said okay bye. You will hear from my attorney. Obviously that was the straw that broke the camel's back. Makes me laugh every time someone asks why did they split up. No feet rub for you. My dad's a divorce lawyer. The mom took their kid to Central South America. The dad was kept out of the loop. My wife divorced me because I had her arrested for domestic assault. She's in childcare, so it was absolutely imperative that she controlled the narrative. Apparently I am a liar. The cops are liars. The children are liars. The baby got smashed itself over my back. The video of her doing these things are also lying. So divorced I got for hanging out with all these liars. A friend of the family got divorced by her husband because she couldn't outperform him on the golf course. We all think he was cheating and just wanted an excuse, but she did say he would often yell at her in public while golfing and mock her for her attention to detail, whatever the duck that means in golf. He would also force the family to go golfing on most weekends, so it's hard to say if that was the real reason or not. She doesn't even like golf but was, and still is, afraid to tell him that. Not a lawyer. In my 20s, back in the 80s, I met a friend's friend who married and ended those marriages, not sure how, divorce or annulment, for fancy parties, wedding receptions, money gifts, wedding gifts, and vacations, honeymoons. She would get married and immediately upon return from the honeymoon, end the marriage and off to find the next guy. In the 7 years or so that I knew of her, she'd been married 4 times. Hopefully soon to be former divorce attorney. I've seen tons of crazy reasons for people to get divorced. Some of them stupid, some of them make perfect sense. I had one person get divorced because her husband wouldn't take her out to the movies anymore. I had one client who looked through her husband's phone and found out he was hiring male escorts while he was on business trips. One female client got a divorce because she hated sex with her husband. Her last relationship before she got married was pretty intense and I guess her husband just didn't match up. I've had a few clients who were teachers get divorced because their spouses found out they were having indecent relationships with students. All of the teachers were female. One divorce involved an elderly couple who had both recently been widowed. They had both been married to their individual spouses for over 40 years. They married each other out of loneliness. About 2 years into the marriage, they realized they made a huge mistake. They couldn't stand each other. It was weird seeing 80-year-olds complaining about the same thing you see kids arguing about. She refused to allow her son to see a movie because her husband wanted him to go to said movie. He took their son to see the movie anyway. A lawyer I know had a client who filed for divorce because his wife was getting married in a month. Not a divorce lawyer, but I read about a divorce on a weird but true site where some guy insisted on a divorce because his wife fed him pumpkins instead of a more expensive counterpart. Easy. She spent $42,000 on psychic hotlines. Notable. She then wouldn't accept any of our offers, and I continuously asked her lawyer to provide counteroffers. Shouldn't her psychic have told her how the case would turn out? Lol. Not a lawyer, but one of the reasons my mom gave my dad on why they needed a divorce was that he bought expensive shampoo. Not really what you are asking, but my sister's old friend had a big wedding and about a month later she accidentally butt-dialed her husband while she was out to dinner with the dude she's been sleeping with. Seemed like an act of God. Ianal, but a friend was getting divorced from his then wife. For reasons. She decided she wanted to sue him for breach of promise, even though they had already been married. Too much Bronte sisters, I guess. The lawyers must have had a laugh over that. Wife was having an affair and husband killed the boyfriend. Life in prison for premeditated murder. Then they got divorced. Well, Mickey Mouse was married to Minnie for about 2 years. He wanted a divorce because she was really silly, and it was getting on his nerves. Or as he put it, Minnie was ducking Goofy. I'm the product of a divorce. My parents finished who got my brother and I in 6 months. It took them 3 years to decide who got the cats. Not sure if that's what you were looking for though. My mother-in-law divorced my father-in-law after 36 years of marriage and him caring for her with a chronic illness and being a great father to her 2 sons from a previous marriage, as well as his own son with her, my husband. And her reason was because he didn't pay attention to her. He is on the autism spectrum and was working 3 jobs to pay for her shopping addiction. Her real reason? She met a guy at a bar, started sleeping around, got approved for disability and moved out the day her back pay was deposited, about 20k. Needless to say, Phil was completely taken off guard by this. She never told him anything was that wrong. He thought they were happy. She doesn't talk to my husband or I anymore because when we found out she'd been cheating on Phil, we found out because she demanded hubby meet new guy after the divorce. Hubby said no, and guy yelled at Mill for making him look stupid. New guy yells at her. She tells us things about him that make us worry a bit. She was in an abusive relationship when she was 16-22 with a guy that almost killed her. She has scars on her neck from it, and met Phil a year after she'd finally left. We point out that new guy seems abusive and encourage her to be careful. Yeah, but divorces suck. Phil is now happily married to a lady from his hometown in Mexico. Mill is no longer with guy she left him for. I guess I'm a late to this one. It was my associate's case, but he had a couple in his office arguing about all the things they disliked about each other. All of a sudden the husband started screaming at the wife about leaving it stains in the toilet. It was the reason, but it was hilarious. Not a lawyer, but I heard on the Dave Glover show that some women are trying to say their husband cheated because they had sex with 6 dolls. My parents. Turns out remarrying each other wasn't such a great idea and they enjoyed their first divorce so much they wanted to do it again. This must be my luck. My parents were arguing about getting a divorce 15 minutes ago. In my country, the new law allowed to just cancel the marriage. Not a divorce lawyer, but my former uncle did request it, specifically the 36 pack of double ply Charmin ultra soft toilet paper and his toothpaste. Edit. Pun not realized. My mother divorced her 3rd husband because she caught him soliciting gay sex on Craigslist. This after he had a 4-year affair with her married best friend. It got so bad that he took their 3 cats to the pound and my mom had to pay enormous fees to get them released before their 24 hours death sentence was imposed. She was 55 and he was 67. He filed for elder abuse and won. He also won punitive damages because she wrote cheater on her check memo line for his monthly alimony payments. My mom ending up giving him every cent she had, and lost the house her and my 14-year-old brother had with him. They were married for 12 years. Husband and wife were married for 15 years, and husband started being less and less intimate with wife. He cheated on her with another woman, and his rationale was that he didn't know if he was impotent or it was just his wife and wanted to find out. Not a lawyer. My mom closed the door of the bedroom. My dad hated that door being closed. They divorced. Y'all make me feel like I could get a divorce and be okay with it. Most of these reasons are way more petty than why my wife and I are going to counseling. Not quite an answer to the question, but a lady at my Catholic church who's heavily against divorce and helps with marriage counseling actually got a divorce herself. Edit. Funny thing is there's another lady at my church with a similar story, except unlike the first lady, she's not an asshole. My friend told me about a situation where the wife was fed up with the husband spending too much time with his dog. One of the two had a problem with the IRS. Divorcing would shield some assets, as long as they were awarded to the other party in the divorce. I don't know how it was supposed to shield assets, and client said they lived apart a lot. I didn't want to look into it too deep, in case I ended up in some sort of fraud. I made client give me enough info that it was plausible they could divorce. Also, there were the airline pilots in the news a while back that were about to lose some of their pension. But if they got divorced, their ex wouldn't lose the benefits. Turns out that marriage fraud is a thing, but divorce fraud isn't. They gave their spouse the retirement, but stayed together like they were still married. Brilliant. Finally, an Ask Reddit question I can answer as a divorce attorney, and there's 3k comments. Question for those who start with not a lawyer, but you're saying your story anyway. Telling people you're not a lawyer has no effect whatsoever. Why do you say this? Not a lawyer. But this is our morbid family joke. Both of my parents acknowledge that the straw that broke the camel's back for them was a night when my very health conscious father was making carrot juice in the kitchen after the kitchen was remodeled. He didn't clean up a small spill behind the juicer and it seeped into the new white countertop and permanently stained it. Now my siblings and I scream whenever someone mentions anything about drinking juice. A Nigerian woman divorced her husband because his D was too big. My friend got married to a guy and they were both going to schools in the same town but now the same school. One day months after they were married, she didn't have classes and decided to surprise her husband by visiting him on campus. Except when she went to the office to find where his class was held, she eventually finds out he's not even enrolled. We still don't know what he was doing or what he did with the tuition money, pretty sure gambling, because he refused to ever say. Husband was making methamphetamine and broke into the house, yet she still didn't want to divorce him because he had lung cancer or something like that. I know someone who divorced his wife because she would not cook him tripe soup. Reading this stuff is really changing how I view marriage. Why do people need to supply other people with the reason they want to get a divorce? And why is it possible for their reasoning to be invalidated? What even is marriage? LMAO. Seems like a very strange thing to me that someone's relationship with another person has anything to do with the government or law. Can someone save me a trip to Google and explain? Have a friend. Was married about 20 years. Found out her husband had proposed to a woman he met online and had never even met in person. She was done. This is too late to the party, and I'm not a divorce lawyer, but my brother got divorced because he used the internet for banking. Religious couple, and she went to a speech that said the internet is the devil. She asked him to stop, but he needed to use the internet for work functions. Aghast that he had an uncontrollable addiction, she took the kids and fled the state the next day. We thought the whole time that there was a deeper issue, that she was just using the internet as cover. But nope. The proceedings are over. And that's what she claimed in court. And she was going after everything he had in custody. She thought it was a slam dunk. Not a lawyer, but heard a story of a couple getting divorced because flecks of spit would land on each other's face whenever they argued. Maybe it's mentioned here. My mom doesn't take too long to tell stories though. My dad is a narcissist and can't stand having to sit and listen to anything that doesn't have to do with him. Our tales from the law. I'll just leave this here.